All right, what's up, people? It's your boy, Jason Muse, aka the Black Muse. Welcome back to another episode of the Black Muse podcast. Um, so this segment is probably going to run long, I can tell, because there's a lot. It's actually going to be dense. It's jam packed. There's a lot of things going on, and I'm going to be giving commentary on another person's commentary. And that person today happens to be Roland Martin from Roland Martin Unfiltered. Roland has a bone to pick with Bill Maher as of about a week ago or so, or maybe even longer, because Bill Maher made some comments about Kamala Harris basically being not so good a politician and suggested that the Democrat Party moving into the 2024 election basically should swap her out with another VP, particularly if Joe Biden runs again. And apparently Roland Martin has taken exception to that. So what I want to do is I want to try to be as fair as possible, as nuanced as possible. And there's a lot of nuance going on here about what exactly Bill Maher is saying, what exactly Roland Martin is disagreeing with, what Roland Martin's kind of rebuttals or refutations even are, evaluate the truth and falsehood of all of those claims, which is going to be a lot of claims because his segment is long. We're going to get into the nitty gritty about Kamala Harris's record and how complicated that is. It's actually more complicated than even I originally thought until I did some research. So at the very least, I think the value of me doing this is that Roland Martin prompted me to do more research. And he's going to talk a lot in that vein about how a lot of people got Kamala Harris all wrong. So I'm trying to be as fair and balanced and as objective as possible. I have my own gripes and my own biases against Kamala Harris's record based on what I know, but I have to admit I didn't thoroughly research every aspect of her career as a prosecutor, as a district attorney, as an attorney general, and even as a senator. So there's definitely room for me to be wrong, and I'm willing to learn. So let's have at it. The first thing that I want to play you is the actual segment from Real Time with Bill Maher, in which he made these comments that have made headlines. It's going to be precisely this video clip that Roland Martin is going to take exception to and be commenting on. So let's watch it uninterrupted without any commentary first, and then we'll get into Roland Martin's conception of what happened. Take a look.
Right now, yeah, but we're just like afraid to. It's like, well, you know, I don't know what more a president could do than he's done in the past three months. I just don't know.
And I got to tell you, he's not giving it up. No, I mean, he waited a very long time. He's like Dracula. I have crossed oceans of time. I have crossed oceans of time to be the president.
Right.
Once you have that real estate and you wake up in the White House and your office is the Oval, I just don't think you give it up. Unless.
Yeah, no, he's not going to quit. He's not giving it up. Oh, he's not a quitter. His whole life he's never been a quitter.
It's very hard to take the nomination away from the president,
yeah, that's not going to happen.
Sitting president. And what I could see is replacing the vice president, because she's just not very popular anywhere, and it didn't seem to work out. And I don't know, that's been done before on a ticket, you know. I mean, a lot of people.
Tulsi Gabbard, remember, that was that moment in the debate where she brought up that there are men and women in California that are in prison for these, you know, pot deals, and then she was laughing about getting high on the radio station. And it was just like Tulsi Gabbard was like this heat-seeking missile. That was the end of it. You know, she's got a lot of, in addition to being, for some reason, an off-putting person, she also has, I think, a lot of baggage that probably wouldn't do well under a lot of scrutiny.
I just think she's a bad politician, and I think she's a very bright person, but I don't know, but I can see them doing that, because a lot of the problem with Biden being old is, if he dies, then, you know, you're going to get this person. Okay, so here's the problem with the Democratic Party. They're so boxed in by identity politics that you cannot conceive of a Democratic ticket that doesn't have a woman, person of color on it, and pretty soon you're going to line up behind that gay, Latino, and you're going to have, you know, a deaf Eskimo be
I think it's Alaric.
Am I right that they are boxed in by identity?
Well, first of all, I see it differently in that I don't think Kamala has caught fire yet or found her footing. I think that's true. I think the polling data says that. but I don't think that she would be a weight on the ticket. What I will say is this. You talk about identity politics. Joe Biden is an example of identity politics. Joe Biden is an example of black voters saying, we think we need to put a white guy in there. And nobody says he's an identity politics guy. Pence. How do you get Pence? You have Trump, who is not the most saintly guy in the world, needs somebody whose identity is conservative Christian. He goes and gets Pence. So politics is about identity. That's what it is. But whenever there's a person of color or a woman, we say, well, that's identity politics. It's all identity politics. You just got to put a ticket that can win. And that's
I don't know.
So that is the clip that is going to be kind of the subject matter proper of Roland Martin and the commentary that he's going to offer. I just wanted you to kind of see it unadulterated without commentary at all. I have my thoughts on it. Largely or broadly, I actually seem to agree generally with the assessment of Bill Maher in terms of both the claim that Kamala Harris is not a very good politician. She's not very popular at all. She never has been, even when she was running for president, to be honest with you. And I think that there are a lot of fair, legitimate criticisms to be had about her criminal justice record, which was exposed on that debate stage by Tulsi Gabbard. I've made commentary on that in a few segments recently. But also the idea that the Democrat Party has boxed itself in and is between a rock and a hard place when it comes to identity politics, because what I think he was getting at is the idea that you have a black woman and all of the value of representation and diversity that holds, and it holds a special place in the heart of progressive types who are fundamentally invested in the idea that putting people who have historically not been in high places in those high places is in some sense making progress. It's in some sense breaking glass ceilings. It's in some sense moving us forward, and it's really, really good for those people who are being represented and affirmed. And whatever way a person can be represented and affirmed by other people who raise to high places that happen to look like them or share their identities. That's what he means when he's talking about identity politics. And so it's going to be a really big slap in the face for all of the people who are supposedly being represented by Kamala Harris, i.e. black women, immigrants, I guess, Indian women, biracial women, progressives maybe more broadly, if she's removed from that place and all of the shame that would come with that. And so the Democrats are kind of between a rock and a hard place if they're going to make this decision, but it might in some sense be beneficial for them to do that because of her lack of popularity. So there's a conundrum there that he's trying to speak to. That's my understanding of what he's saying. I think he's basically right. But now what we're going to do is we are going to methodically move through Roland Martin's commentary. And I'm going to be honest with you, Roland Martin often comes off this way to me. But Roland Martin's going to come off a little unhinged here. He's definitely irate. He's definitely upset. He's definitely offended by Bill Maher's comments, and it's coming from a particular kind of racial lens, which I do not subscribe to. It's kind of a hallmark of wokeness that I disagree with vehemently, ideologically and philosophically. But let's go through it and try to extract some nuggets of truth, because I do think that there's some truth to what Roland Martin is trying to argue. I just don't. I think that a lot of the things that he's going to say are going to not be fair criticisms of Bill Maher ultimately. But we'll methodically pick through it slowly but surely. And again, this is probably going to be long because his segment is long. So without further ado.
So I had somebody who came up to me last week at CBC, older sister, and she said, Roland, I love watching your show. I used to watch all the time, but you cuss too much. See, what I just played is the reason why I cuss. And I told her, I said, I don't cuss that much. I'm trying not to cuss. I'm trying. But that bullshit is why it will make you cuss.
So yeah, it's just right off the bat, just the righteous indignation. So apparently he's irate about something, but I think he feels justified in his indignation. I just wanted to kind of note that. And Roland Martin does curse a lot. I curse too, so I'm not holier than thou on that. And I don't know who curses, me or him. Probably him more. But whatever.
That crap right there. And Van was nice to him. Van was real nice to him. First of all, the little white woman. I would have said, what the hell is off-putting? I would have said, I need you to explain to me off-putting. Every black woman,
Not the black woman in the background
who
signing
has
off.
worked in corporate America, in politics, in academia, has heard that little sit. They're off-putting.
Okay, so so Roland is going to be speaking to a lot of the kind of racial overtones or undertones, the kind of racial subtext. This is something that's very common with a certain kind of racial identity politicking and kind of critical race theory lens. That some of the forms of racial commentary or forms of racial prejudice manifest themselves in really, really subtle ways. And so there's a whole discourse about that attempts to like name and stamp and specify what's going on when these subtle forms of racism are happening. And so he's going to casually speak in that manner, borrowing heavily from that kind of that set of ideological, or the set of ideological presuppositions that kind of enable this thing. But it's also kind of a cultural too. So it's a set of cultural norms in the Black community whereby we kind of all agree that we know racism when we see it. And there are a lot of subtle ways that uppity white folk convey their disdain for us. And we're so used to it culturally that we're able to kind of snuff it out. And we don't necessarily even need a whole bunch of robust language or jargon in order to like articulate that. So that's part of why I think he's going to casually go into it. But right now, what he's speaking to is, there was a woman, she happens to be white, she was on the show. She made a comment in passing, or really an allusion to the Tulsi Gabbard owning the fuck out of Kamala Harris. I've talked about that several times. But she ultimately, on the way to making that point, described Kamala Harris as off-putting. And he seems to be taking issue with that choice of words because he thinks, or I guess he's implying, and the black woman is kind of signing off on her, whoever that is in the background, that is a kind of subtle form of maybe racist language, or is at least revealing her racial prejudice against Kamala Harris. I think that's the commentary he's offering right now. The thing that is a little annoying about that, dare I say off-putting about that kind of thing, is that a lot of time this stuff merely takes the form of mere accusations that people are certain about with no real evidence whatsoever. And the only thing that is usually offered in support of these allegations, baseless though they may be, is that there's a long history of that kind of thing being perpetrated by certain kinds of people, i.e. in this case, white women, against certain kinds of people, i.e. in this case, black women. And so the kind of implication there is that black people have a special sense for these kind of things, and you should just take our word for it when our black spidey senses start tingling whenever we detect subtle forms of racism. I don't buy that type of shit. I believe in objectivity, and I believe that you should be able to verify and prove your claims, whether you're black or not. I do believe that it is plausible that there are subtle forms of expression of racial prejudice that people express, sometimes perhaps even subconsciously or unintentionally, that black people have the ability to kind of pick up on because they're really, really keen to the subtleties of modes of expression in that way. But there's no way to prove it, though. And insofar as they can't prove it, they don't get to just levy baseless accusations. They're not justified in levying those baseless accusations, even though they may have accidentally or correctly identified that in that particular instance. So that's kind of my philosophy. I know that a lot of people in my community object to that vehemently because they fundamentally want to be able to levy these allegations, because there's a certain kind of power in it, particularly in social cultural context, when it comes to reinforcing certain ideas that or certain, let's say, practices of certain practices whereby people express these kind of subtle forms of racism that give black people the ability to kind of fight back. Because the expectation is we all are going to act a goddamn fool if we feel like you do that. So watch your goddamn mouth, right? And that kind of culture of joining together in solidarity to fight back against the oppressor is really inculcated in that. And that shit's deep. So I think that's part of what's going on right now. And I just kind of wanted to break that down because that's going on under the surface. And there's going to be a lot of that going on and kind of his analysis that I'm going to try to make explicit. But for that reason, I think he's going to end up making a bunch of baseless assertions that a lot of people on his show are going to agree with because, again, there's a kind of set of cultural norms whereby Black people just kind of agree with that type of shit because it speaks to their experience, so to speak. All right, here we go.
What do you mean? Off-putting. Then I heard baggage. First of all, she straight lied. It has been totally refuted. That lie about Kamala Harris locking up millions of people because of weed.
I don't think anybody said that she locked up millions of people. I don't think the woman in that segment said that she locked up millions of people. I don't think Tulsi Gabbard said she locked up millions of people. I don't know who he's referring to. I don't think she's locked up millions of people. I don't know that there were millions of people locked up under her stint as either district attorney or attorney general or even that much combined in the state of California, to be fair. So I think he's right that that's not true. I feel like he's falsely attributing that claim to people. Maybe he's implying that she tacitly endorsed it, like casually making a reference to the exchange between Tulsi Gabbard and Kamala Harris. But I genuinely don't understand why he went there. Maybe it just called to mind some people he has in mind who I'm unaware of who made that claim, which happens to be wrong.
That lie has been refuted. And a whole bunch of brothers and sisters were running around believing that lie, and it's a lie. It's a flat out lie. And in fact, my man Drew comments, Drew, y'all follow him on social media. It was so funny because he's done a number of videos. Y'all, let me see if we can get Drew on the phone about this whole weed deal. It's a lie. So that woman just lied, and Bill Maher said nothing in correcting her.
I mean, ironically, she didn't lie, or at least she didn't tell that specific lie. He misattributes to her, which technically means he lied by saying she lied when she didn't. And ironically, nobody on his show is going to correct him. So I guess it happens to the best of us. This is just a weird mistake that Roland's making right now. I don't understand why he's attributing that claim to anyone. Nobody nobody in the clip he played, as well as nobody referenced by the woman he's referring to in the clip he played, because they're referring to a debate that happened between Kamala Harris and Tulsi Gabbard. None of those people, so either Tulsi or this white woman, or even Bill Maher, said that. So I don't know, man. I mean, it feels like he's straw manning people. Maybe he misunderstood to be charitable to him, but I don't know. Maybe he just. Sometimes I get the sense when people make this kind of mistake that what they're doing is they have a certain set of talking points that are devised to debunk very specific claims. And so any claim that comes close to the claims that they're prepared to argue against, they get subsumed under those claims, even if they're not the same.
Then he said, bad politician. Do you know who is the most effective person for the White House right now in talking about the Dobbs decision and Roe v. Wade in the political context? Vice President Kamala Harris.
So there's an interesting question about as to like whether that's true and how you would even know, like what would be the criteria by which you would determine that, or how would you measure that? But let's just assume for a second that he's right, and we just declare, just for sake of argument, that Kamala Harris is the most effective person in the White House in terms of, I guess, communicating or advocating effectively in the wake of the overturning of Roe v. Wade and the Dobbs decision. Okay. Let's take that for granted for a second. That still wouldn't prove that she's a good politician. Like, to be effective with respect to messaging about one particular issue does not make you a good politician. She could be good with respect to that issue, But that doesn't make her a good politician in general. She could still be a terrible politician in general, even though she has a good record on one particular issue. Is that not possible? All of the issues that are germane to the White House and what the White House is dealing with right now, like count them all, right? Giving her credit for one issue out of all of those other ones does not make her a good politician by any metric. So I don't understand this argument at all. But
do you know who played a significant role in pushing Biden on the student loan debt relief? Vice President Biden, Vice President Harris.
What exactly did she do? Like, okay, so again, I'm not really in a position to refute this because he didn't really present any support for it. But let's just say that he's right about that. Let's say that Kamala Harris played some kind of non-trivial instrumental role in pushing the current administration to give student loan debt forgiveness. First of all, a lot of people are unhappy with it because they kind of like walked it back halfway, because it was like, hey, here's some student debt forgiveness, generally speaking, under a certain amount. And then it's like, but those private loans, haha, never mind. Like, so if she's responsible for that, then she's not a good politician, is what that would mean. But let's say that she had nothing to do with that, and whatever benefits you are you could argue come from the student debt forgiveness, she's responsible for. Then that would be two issues out of all of the issues that she gets, points on. That still doesn't make her a good politician. Like, I feel like you got to come with more examples than just two, bruh. Like what? That's it. Like, I guess. I mean, and to be fair, it's not like she's just a total failure, but you could still be a failure even though you have some successes. Like, if you fail overall, like, just because you have a couple of wins doesn't mean you're not a failure. What? Especially if your failures outweigh in terms of their impacts to your successes.
Now, did she have a rocky first year? Of course. Of course. But y'all notice all of the Harris's awful stories, y'all notice how they just disappeared.
No, they haven't. What is he talking about? No, they haven't. What is the point of this segment if they've disappeared? Bill Maher made another one of those comments, and those comments have been continually being perpetuated and made over and over and over and over again. Maybe not in your bubble where you hang out and who you talk to, Roland Martin, but motherfuckers been talking shit about Kamala Harris the whole time she's been in office. It's kind of common knowledge now that most people don't like her. So to whatever extent you might be right, is because we've all kind of agreed, or most of us have kind of agreed, that she ain't shit. Stop it. So, like, what are you talking about, bro? Like, what? Like, so everybody has like became quiet about Kamala Harris's terrible job as vice president, and then all of a sudden, out of the blue, Bill Maher commented on it. Is that what you think, Roland Martin? For real, bruh? Stop it, bruh.
But see, this is how folk like Bill Maher throw this kind of crap out. But now let me get to the crust of what I want to deal with. Bill Maher said, the Democrats have boxed themselves in by identity politics.
Yeah.
This is the favorite phrase of white liberal / progressive men like Bill Maher. Because
I just got to stop for a moment and pause. I'm actually surprised, not a little bit surprised, not a lot surprised, but I'm actually a little surprised that Roland Martin is now identifying Bill as a white liberal, because lately woketards have been talking about Bill Maher like this motherfucker's a right winger. And I just think that's funny. These people on the left cannot make up their minds, bro. Now, I know everybody on the left doesn't agree on everything all the time, to be fair. And there's differences or whatever. There's nuance there. I get that. And particularly black people on the left don't always see eye to eye with woke white liberals, clearly, because he's levying a criticism or critique of woke white liberals. Or I should just say white liberals or white Democrat types, such as Bill Maher. And he's about to saddle him with some baseless accusations of racism, because fundamentally, through his lens, which is, I guess, the only lens he works with, Bill Maher's objections can only be motivated by racism. They can't be motivated by anything substantive that he's noticing. He's in the wrong skin making these criticisms, right? But ironically, if somebody in the right skin were to make these criticisms, they'd be dismissed as well as stupid, foolish, Uncle Tom's, etc. If Candace Owens levied the exact same criticism, like he couldn't levy this critique, but the critique would be that somehow magically the person in the correct skin, who I guess is qualified via their skin color and via their identity as a black person to levy these criticisms, would in some sense be embracing whiteness or white supremacy, I guess. Maybe, dude. Like, this is, oh God. He's engaging in identity politics right now, unapologetically, but then, like, I guess his hope, well, one of the points that he's going to make that I'm going to try to steal, man, is the idea that actually identity politics is not relegated to just certain identity groups, i.e. the historically marginalized. Identity politics actually is a concept that pertains more broadly to anybody who has any admits of any identity, historically, even the majority identities, even the identities of people who have historically been guilty of doing the oppressing as opposed to being oppressed, which I actually think is a fair criticism in general. I don't know how it applies here though, but here we go.
These white men don't like the fact that they no longer are plan A, plan B, plan C, and plan D.
But this is, again, just a bunch of baseless accusations. So I guess the contention here is that Bill Maher's criticism is based either tacitly or implicitly in the fact that Bill Maher's really, really butthurt that his identity group, his preferred identity group, which is white men, don't get to be the center of attention anymore in this country or some shit. And so there's a kind of presumed race-based or identity-based insecurity that is psychologically motivating his criticisms against Kamala Harris. Again, there's no real evidence for that. It's just a baseless accusation. And the only indicator I can see that Roland Martin even would apply this to Bill Maher is that Bill Maher happens to be a white dude saying the no words. Like, this is shit I don't fuck with. This is why I don't like Roland Martin, and this is why I don't like woke people, because they do this shit all the time. It's so fucking annoying.
Let me say it again. White fear ain't just about white conservatives.
Shameless plug of his book.
White fear is also about white liberals, white progressives.
White fear.
Because the operative word is white.
I'll look up this book now.
Do y'all want to know who is really afraid of black and Latinos getting numbers increasing? White Democratic strategists who control the purse strings to the billions of dollars, because they don't want to see black strategists, black campaign managers, black media analysts, black pollsters, because these white Democratic strategists have become multi-millionaires off of these campaigns. It ain't no different. Y'all don't get confused about what's going on here. So what Bill Maher says here, oh, they're getting boxed in by identity politics. Bill Maher refuses to recognize that whiteness is identity politics. Hey, Bill Maher, since you're scared to invite me back on your show, the only time I got invited was October 2014 and killed, but y'all a little scared to invite a brother back.
Roland Martin sounds a little too butthurt about that. Like, bruh, you come on now, Roland. You being a little bit too petty right now about that shit. Why would you even bring that up in this context? Like, if anything, ironically, your criticisms of Bill Maher seem to be motivated more by the fact that he won't invite you on the show than anything. Like, what if, like, I'm just amused by this idea. So, like, part of his contention is he's projecting onto Bill Maher some kind of insecurity that's based in his white maleness. And that's supposed to be the explainer, the motivator of Bill Maher's criticisms. that actually doesn't really seem to have anything to do with the substance of Bill Maher's criticisms of the Democrat Party or Kamala Harris at all. It seems like Bill Maher's just making casual observations about how she's having a tough go at it in the political sphere. Bill Maher's not the only one who has noticed this, though. A lot of people on the left generally have noticed this, of all different colors and creeds, of all different genders, gay, straight, black, white, brown, etc. Roland Martin ain't gonna touch that though. But whatever. Bill Maher, it's easy to focus in on the fact that Bill Maher is a white dude. And Bill Maher, as a white dude, is not allowed to say these things, apparently, without being guilty of some kind of race-based or gender-based transgression. That's weird. But there's actually more evidence in this exchange and how he's responding to Bill that Roland Martin is actually like perturbed by the fact that he's jealous of Bill's show or some shit, or that he's big mad that Bill didn't invite him on his show. There's actually more evidence for that being the motivation for Roland Martin's criticisms of Bill than whatever the fuck he just said about Bill, to be fair. Also, just real quick, I have to show this right now. I'm gonna full screen it. So this is White Fear. This is a collabo between Roland Martin and Leah Lockins. I wanted to read you the summary on Amazon. I didn't know he wrote this book. This book seems, but judging by it's going to apply whatever kind of lens that, or kind of philosophical or ideological, underpinnings to the January 6th thing. And I've heard Roland Martin in different clips that I've heard him say this sometimes, but fundamentally the idea is that there's this growing animus amongst white people in America that has a long history, whereby white people are being motivated politically by a disturbing sense of fear that they're going to be replaced. The Great Replacement Theory, and it's being there's a whole narrative about how it's like a hallmark of white supremacy in contemporary times, and so white people are like reanimating the racism that has always been there, and to a certain extent maybe has been latent because white people were chilling because they were the majority. But now things are changing because the progressives are winning, and so now white people are really perturbed by that. So the white people were acting a goddamn fool because they're basically motivated by this desperation or this insecurity of, we're not going to be in the majority anymore and we're going to lose power, and that's really, really bad for us because we're used to everything going great for us and we don't want to share. I've heard so many black people that talk like Roland Martin say shit like this. Okay, so let me read this real quick. White fear has shaped our democracy and society from the beginning. Let me repeat that again. White fear has shaped our democracy and society from the beginning. And today, it's more intense and visible than ever. Even more intense than slave times? Maybe? That's a bold claim. To know it, we must first understand it. And I guess this book is going to help us do that. For 2 centuries, the deep-seated fear that many white people feel of losing power, of losing economic standing, of losing a particular way of life has been the driving force behind American politics and culture. White fear enabled the rise of Donald Trump. It's behind the recent flood of restrictive voting laws disproportionately impacting people of color. It's why reactions to movements like Black Lives Matter and football players take so negative and so strong. So all these things that progressives, particularly black progressives, complain about is all due to white fear. Of course, as we approach a future where white people will become the racial minority in the U.S., I think is what I meant to say. Something estimated to occur as early as 2043, that fear is only intensifying, festering, and becoming more visible. So we're now starting to see more fear, and so the racism that was actually hidden is now starting to come to light and show its ugly face because they're becoming more and more desperate because they're about to lose their majority and all of the power that comes with that. And white people are in cahoots about that, apparently. Are we destined for a violent clash? What can we do to step into our country's inevitable future without tearing ourselves apart in the process? Nationally renowned journalist and award-winning author Roland Martin has been sounding this alarm for more than a decade. In White Fear, he provides a primer on what has shaped and continues to shape our democracy and our culture. He connects the separate puzzle pieces from the Tea Party movement to the decline of white American optimism, to the diminishing blue-collar workforce, to illuminate the larger picture of what will unfold in America over the next decade plus. It offers a better way forward. What way forward is that? If we want to create the kind of country that we're all welcome in and proud to live in, we can no longer ignore white fear. We must learn to recognize, understand, and dismantle. And as the last few years have shown, we don't have any time to lose. So time is of the essence, apparently. There's something coming down the pike in terms of white racial animus, and like we need to like get on that. We need to buy his book so we can read about it and understand it, and then I guess take whatever pathway forward that was purposefully left out of the summary on Amazon, because I guess you have to buy the book to know. Cliffhanger much. Yeah, I don't buy this whole philosophy and this whole worldview. I think it's very problematic. There is a long-standing history of white supremacy that we need to remain vigilant about. I don't think that is as alive and well as Roland Martin seems to think that it is. People like him talk as if white supremacy has never disappeared. It's just changed forms in certain kinds of ways. I do think that there are many ways in which white people are still the dominant group, just by virtue of the fact that they are clearly the majority in terms of the population. But you would expect any group of people that has a robust identity that happens to be that much of a majority of the population to be a dominant group in any circumstance. It doesn't matter what country, it doesn't matter what identity they share. So that's not uncommon. So I do think that there's something like what he's talking about that is actually true now in 2022. I don't know that white people are as united as he makes it seem, because like conservative whites and white liberals like fight all the fucking time. It's actually insane how much they fight. There's no uniformity even in whiteness. They may be in the majority, but like they're divided politically as well. So, I mean, I guess, I mean, maybe they pretend to do that, like they're secretly in cahoots. I've heard conspiracy theories like that hail from the left, and black people on the left in particular. But I don't know, man. Like, I've just never been on board with talking about white supremacy as if it's this ghostly, disembodied force that just acts in such a way as to always screw over non-white people. I don't think that works in reality. It sounds really kooky to me, but there are some nuggets of truth in these kinds of observations and criticisms about identity politics, how identity politics applies to white people. I actually think that's a very interesting and fascinating discourse, but the way that they approach the discourse is overly simplistic, and it's actually ironically not nuanced enough, because it's not properly attentive to the ways with which white people are not very uniform at all, even with respect to what their conceptions of power or amalgamating power and influence politically even looks like. Like the good old days where it was just whites versus everybody else are long dead. and actually it never was that. I mean, even back during slave days, white people used to argue amongst each other. Even when they wouldn't let black people vote, they used to argue amongst each other, and quite literally escalated all the way to a full-scale civil war. White people were fighting against other white people about shit, fam. So I don't know, man. This the myth of like this solid white identity that, like, I don't know. I don't get it, dude. There's so many problems with it. But yeah, let's continue. I'm having fun.
What are soccer moms? Renita, can you just tell me, when we hit the phrase soccer moms, who are they talking about?
White women, and that is identity politics.
I'm a Congo. When you hear NASCAR dads, who are they talking about?
Talking about white men.
Julian, when you hear the phrase the working class, is it actually conjuring up black and Latino workers?
No, you're talking about the white boy with a lunch bucket.
Precisely. Precisely.
Well, with the majority of working class.
Right, precisely. I got it. But the point here, folks, is when you look at politics, they literally segment audiences based upon identity.
I don't see how the comment he just made fits into the overall point he's making, but I'm gonna try to be generous because it may just be a lack of understanding on my part. I actually, to his credit, I think that Roland Martin is actually a very smart person generally. I think he's very well read. I just think he's hella fucking biased, but he operates with a certain kind of lens that I loosely understand, so I can kind of understand where he's coming from sometimes. So the examples that he seems so satisfied with just now that he gave speak to certain white stereotypes, and the way he asked the question, I think, is indicative of how he wants us to think about it, which is those kinds of stereotypes, those terms, soccer mom, NASCAR dads, those are kind of racialized in terms of the stereotypes that they fit. When I think of soccer moms, I typically think of white women, personally. If you were to say NASCAR dads, in virtue of the fact that NASCAR is such a white dominated, if you want to call it a sport or whatever activity, I think of white dudes. The working class is an interesting one. I think of the working class as actually predominantly people of color. That's more to do with my experience and what I've read about it, and that was actually part of the commentary that the lady gave. But I guess there is a general stereotype where people who say working class are thinking about white people, like blue collar workers, like fucking ice fishers, truck drivers who are stereotypically white, but actually a lot of truck drivers are people of color too. But like I think he's speaking more to the stereotype. Like maybe your average white person might think of that as it might conjure up in their mind examples of white people, kind of, subliminal. It's just kind of subconscious. Like they're not purposely trying to exclude anybody. They're just like, that's the first thing that comes to their mind. So I think that's what he's getting at. Plumbers, coal miners, like those are jobs that I associate with white people stereotypically, even though the reality of like the majority of the people who work those particular jobs may not even be white centric like that. I wouldn't even say construction workers are mostly white, because actually when I think of construction workers, I think more Hispanic people. And I've actually seen a lot of examples of black construction workers. I've seen white construction workers too, for sure. Mostly on TV. Actually, no, in real life too, actually. So I don't know. But I'm thinking like, manual labor jobs, hard, blue collar jobs like that. There probably are general stereotypes where those things are associated with being white, white people mainly. Like if to me, for better or worse, if you were to say electrician, what conjures up in my mind is a white person for some reason, even though I've actually seen electricians of color before, but I've mostly seen examples either via TV or in real life of white people for whatever reason. So that might be an example. So I think that's what he's getting at when he's saying working class. Is like maybe people generally have in mind white people. I don't happen to have that stereotype, but I could understand if a person did. Particularly if they didn't come from working class and they didn't associate with working class people. And so their conception of it might be, and they only interacted with white people in their lives, then their conception of it might be white centric for sure. So that's a pretty interesting thing. Now, I don't know how that meshes with the point he's trying to make about how the like I guess television stations or whoever segments audiences by identity. Like you have all kinds of like demographic data about like your television audience. Bill Maher would know all about that. It has to do with the ratings for his show, who's watching his show and who's not, and people make decisions about who they want to cater to in terms of their show. If they happen to know that a significant proportion of their show are white affluent people, then they're probably going to tailor their show to appeal to that demographic, for example. So there's a lot of economic interest in doing that. So Roland Martin's not wrong about that. He's also in media as well, so I know he's very keen and attentive to that because it's a big deal in media, because there's a whole bunch of economic incentives about it, like it's tied to your dollars, your advertising, etc. So I don't know, maybe I should listen more to see the ultimate point that he's trying to make, but I guess he's trying to say that these are all examples of identity politics, and they're not just exclusive to people of color or minority groups. They apply to everyone, including but not limited to white people, which I've agreed with already. So I guess that's the point he's making. I just don't see what does it have to do with what Bill Maher's actually saying?
Do y'all actually think for a second They only do it when it comes to black and Latino folks. And you heard Bill Maher. Well, next up, they're going to be lining up the gay and Latino. I forgot the little dismissive comment that he
Jeff
used.
Eskimo. It was a joke. First of all, that kind of commentary, the way that he gave it is like, it's the kind of thing that the show actually is catered towards, like having little witty comments that people laugh to, and they probably, I think they have signs with these live audience shows where they tell them to laugh at jokes and shit. It makes it seem like it's funny and shit. There's a psychological impact that it has in the audience. It's like, oh, everybody's laughing. I guess I should laugh. Here's the cue to laugh. Sitcoms work that way. I think the fundamental mistake that Roland Martin's making is that he's presuming that Bill Maher said what he said because he doesn't understand that identity politics applies to white people. I think Bill Maher is just aware of the fact that the way that identity politics is done amongst people on the left and in the Democrat Party is they put a premium on certain groups, i.e. historically marginalized groups. Because they haven't historically been in positions of power, they put a premium on putting them in those positions of power in order to virtue signal and make it seem like they're doing awesome things and that they're uber fucking progressive, right? So Bill Maher may completely be aware that like there is such a thing as white people and that like identity politics would pertain to those groups of people too, but like that's not germane to what the situation is regarding his suggestion that Kamala Harris should be replaced. Kamala Harris happens to be a member of several historically marginalized groups at the intersection of several historically marginalized identities: immigrant, woman, black, right? There's never been a vice president that has checked those boxes, ever, or even a subset of those, like woman. Just woman alone. Immigrant, I don't know if there's ever been an immigrant vice president, ever. There might have been, I don't know. I'm genuinely speaking to ignorance. There's definitely never been a black vice president, and there's definitely never been a female vice president. So there's a premium there, and that actually speaks to the point Bill Maher was making, which is going completely over Roland Martin's head, because it's saying a lot of nonsense, is not really addressing it, which is that the reason why the Democrats are between a rock and a hard place is because they have sold their voters, their constituents, on we're the progressive ones that care about the downtrodden and historically marginalized. So to dismiss a black woman from a historic position of power in that way by swapping her out with somebody else is going to be a huge slap in the face. It's going to look like they're not really that committed to the thing that they've sold to their constituents. That's why it's a problem. At the same time, what Bill Maher was saying is it would be beneficial because she's completely unpopular. So if you can replace her with somebody who's more popular and maybe check some other identity boxes, right? But will the backlash that you face from dismissing the first ever black woman vice president outweigh the gains that you get for replacing her with somebody more popular? That's a conundrum. That's what he was speaking to. I don't think Roland Martin even understood it. I think Roland Martin is just incensed that he had the audacity to criticize a black woman, and he's making it about race when it really isn't, which is a trap that a lot of woke people fall into. But I digress.
Y'all, this is what we're talking about here.
Clock.
And so you got to be aware of white so-called Democrats and progressives who themselves, they don't like the fact that we now get to have a voice. We now get to have a perspective.
It would make his man, these are so baseless. It would make more sense if Bill Maher had suggested specifically that they need to replace Kamala Harris with a white person. Then his accusations of racism and racial motivations would make way more sense. Bill Maher remained silent on who they should replace Kamala Harris with. But I guess his presumption is that he doesn't like Kamala Harris really secretly because she's black, and that offends his delicate white male sensibilities, I guess. But like, if you could replace, I wonder if Bill Maher would be cool with replacing Kamala Harris with a way more popular black person, like Michelle Obama. Like, I think he'd love that idea because I think that he loves Michelle Obama. I think he loves the Obamas generally. And I think Michelle Obama would kill it. In fact, I think Michelle Obama could run for president and win. I think Michelle Obama would get hella voter turnout. Niggas would be leaping to vote for this woman. And I would consider it. I would strongly consider voting for Michelle Obama, although I would hesitate because I'm still a little disillusioned by Barack from some of the stuff that he did. But I would consider it. She would definitely be popular among progressives. Or fucking, I don't know, somebody like Meghan Markle or some shit. Like, progressives were fawning over her, particularly the Gen Zers. Or AOC if she were old enough. Although AOC is starting to have a similar kind of, but I think AOC is way more popular than Kamala Harris, though. Or even Stacey Abrams. I mean, Stacey Abrams is kind of losing her luster too. But I think Stacey Abrams is in some sense better than Kamala Harris in terms of popularity. At least now she is. But I don't know, like pick another black person who's a black woman even who is just more popular than Kamala Harris. Would Roland Martin's baseless accusations make more or less sense if he was willing to do that? Has Roland Martin even considered any of this? Inquiring minds want to know.
Bill Maher is one of those white men. And see, Bill Maher thinks because he slept with a lot of black women and he smoked weed with a lot of black people, he thinks he's a brother. You're
No,
not.
he doesn't.
Bill, you are a white man.
He did. Okay, I will say this though. Bill Maher is very comfortable with black people. And I think because he associates with them, and I don't think he thinks ill of black people generally. But he did do that "I'm a house Negro" line and got a little flack for it. But it was like really tempered flack. Like I actually thought he would get more flack, but I guess I don't know. I don't know why he didn't get more. Like I don't know why that wasn't more controversial. I don't know why he didn't get kicked off of his show permanently. That was cancelable. But I guess because he's progressive enough, he got away with it. I feel like Eminem could get away with saying the N-word like once. I feel like a lot of black people would just be cool with it. Just like one time. Just like, you know what I mean? Especially back in the day when he used to say all the out-of-pocket shit he used to say. In fact, I think I wouldn't be surprised if Eminem had said the N-word several times. I would not be surprised. I would not be surprised. I wouldn't endorse it. I don't think he should. I'm just saying I wouldn't be surprised if he had.
Talk like a white man. You live like a white man.
What does that even mean?
And you don't want to accept the reality that this is a world that is no longer being dominated by white men. White men like yourself are.
I thought it was still being dominated by white men. I guess what he means is it's being dominated less so by white men. Because if it's not being dominated by white men anymore, then what is all of this critique of the white male patriarchy then? Like, I thought the essential contention of the feminists was that white male power is still oppressive. It's still actively oppressing people, right? No? And if it's not actively oppressing people and you've already won, then what the fuck are you critiquing? What is it that you are advocating that we actively dismantle if it's not actively in place, right? So like they still have to be the dominant group if they're actively oppressing people, right? Can you oppress people if you're not actively dominating them? Can you oppress them? Is that possible? That's an interesting philosophical question. So I don't know, man. It feels like he just contradicted himself in a way. But maybe what he means to steelman him somewhat is that what Bill Maher is sensing or feeling is that white people are less dominant than they used to be historically, and it's the active losing of that dominance that is motivating Bill Maher to kind of, I guess put Kamala in her place or some shit, and in criticizing her on his show, activate or reactivate or reinvigorate that dominance. Maybe is that what he means? I'm actually not clear anymore on what he means.
Are threatened by black people, black men, black women, Latinos, Asians.
Why would
That's a fact.
It's a fact because you declared it a fact. Why is he threatened by any of those groups? Well, especially if white males are actively the dominant group. And if they're not actively the dominant group, then who is the dominant group then? And what is like, what would be the purpose of critiquing it or dismantling it or doing what you said in your very subpar mediocre book? Like what? If we want to create the kind of country that we're all welcome in and proud to live in, we can no longer ignore white fear. That implies that we live in a country right now where we're not all welcome and proud to live in it. We got to recognize it, understand it, and dismantle white fear. All right. I mean, I don't think Roland. I mean, far be it from Roland Martin to say that everything is equal. I don't think that he thinks that. So that would imply logically that he thinks that there's still active discrimination or there's active domination of certain groups. And I presume the way he's talking to Bill Maher, he thinks that those are white men. By the way, this is that anti-white male rhetoric that David Pakman and Kyle Kalinske were trying to pretend doesn't exist. This motherfucker is demonstrating it right now, full effect. This motherfucker has a major YouTube channel and says shit like this on a regular basis. Like this kind of talk is so common on the left. Like at this point, like I don't understand why people deny this shit. But whatever.
You don't want to own up to that. And what y'all do is y'all sit here and purposely lie on Vice President Harris, and then the stuck on stupid people who do no research, who listen to disinformation and misinformation, they run with it. Well, and see, this is why y'all get mad. Roland, why you interrupt people? Because when people come on my show and lie, I stop them.
Well, what about when you lie on your own show? Who's gonna stop you? Part of what's amusing about me doing it this way is that he can't interrupt me. I can pause him anytime I want to. I actually would love to go on his show and like say this shit to his face. I'm sure he would interrupt me, because I feel like that would be the only way that he could possibly win like a cogent argument about some things. Well, to be fair though, I think Roland Martin actually does know a lot of things that I don't know. I think that he's more well read on certain things and more well versed on a lot of things that have to do with Black conscientiousness and Black politics and the history of Black politicking in the United States that I'm not aware of, to be fair to him. So I think that actually he would have a lot that he could teach me, to be fair to him. I don't think I'm on his level with respect to his expertise in those things that I lack. So I wouldn't want to go in there too pompous, but like the kinds of things that I'm pointing out right now, I think that I could point those things out to him. I don't think he would receive them though. I think he would have all kinds of like preconditioned responses and dismiss them and stuff. And he would lord his advanced knowledge of Black culture and the history of Black politicking and the things that he's read, his familiarity with facets of Black culture that I'm only vicariously experienced through other people, etc. He would lord that over me and make it seem like I don't know what I'm talking about. I'm sure I've seen him do that to other people, other young people too. But at the end of the day, like I don't know that he would win on substance in many of these debates when it comes to like his racial lens and the critiques that I have about that woke shit. I don't fuck with that shit. But I mean, maybe he would win. Maybe he would be more persuasive. Maybe he would be able to leverage his knowledge in ways that I couldn't even anticipate because I don't know. Maybe. But yeah, here we go.
They lie. I stopped them.
Oh, also, where's the lie exactly? So I actually need to go into this pretty soon because I don't think there's been any lies told about Kamala Harris at all so far. He hasn't identified any.
Bill Maher should have known with all the weed he smoked that what she said about Kamala Harris, locking up all of these Black and brown people because of weed, was a lie.
She didn't say that. Well, okay. Before you said millions, what she did is she referred to what Tulsi Gabbard said, and Tulsi Gabbard said a specific number, I believe. And Tulsi Gabbard's basically right. I already read the fact checks, and I'm actually going to show y'all in a second. So I don't really see a lie. I'm going to try to be as thorough as possible, and I'm trying to steel man Roland at the best of my ability, but I don't really see any lies here. I don't think she lied about anything.
But when you're not a real journalist and you're playing a smart media person, you're really a comedian, and there's some smart comedians, you don't have the research at hand, so you can't say, I'm sorry, that's not true. So that woman, and again, just so y'all think
I mean, to be fair, I've heard Bill Maher
play what Caitlin said, which is a lie,
before.
And I'll bring my man Drew in, and I'm gonna bring the panel in as well, because y'all need to understand why we do this show. It's because people with like Bill Maher, with major platforms, when they throw that stuff out there, then folks run with it. And then it spurs stories and blogs and podcasts. And that's how it gets built. Oh my God, Vice President Kamala Harris is so awful. She's so terrible. She should be replaced in 2024. With who, Bill? A young white guy?
He didn't say that. Why are
Hell, you
assuming that?
complained about gays and Latinos. So Pete Buttigieg, I guess you don't pass Bill Maher's test.
What?
Oh, ATD Secretary. But Sarah, sorry, you're out.
What?
What Bill Maher is essentially saying is, please, white people only apply.
That's not a fair thing to attribute to Bill Maher at all. That's not what Bill Maher said at all. Bill Maher was making fun of the ridiculous identity politicking that the left, generally, and the Democrat Party specifically, are guilty of. And so he went through the different identity groups that they put a premium on, and he was making it sound sarcastically as like, yep, we're just going to line up. First it's going to start with, the black woman, and then it's going to be like the gay person next, and then eventually you're going to end up with like a deaf Eskimo. How many deaf Eskimos have we had in the highest office in the land? So he's actually like mocking the modus operandi of the professional identity politickers on the left, fam. And he's not wrong. He wasn't implying that members of those groups weren't eligible to be vice president, though. What? Like, you're either deliberately or vapidly misunderstanding this man, and you're misattributing shit to him he didn't even say, and it's clear that he doesn't think, or at least it's not clear that he thinks those things.
So let me just play again. To listen to this, I want y'all to listen to clearly what is being said here.
Could see is replacing the vice president because, yeah, she's not very popular anywhere, and it didn't seem to work out. And
replace the vice president because she's not very popular anywhere, and it didn't really seem to work out. Now, what the fuck? What part of that means white people only need apply? Like, how do you go from that to only white people should be vice president in the Democrat Party, bro? What? Wasn't Bill Maher like super gung-ho about Barack Obama too? I think he did criticize Barack Obama a little bit, but I don't know that he was opposed to Barack Obama being president. I don't know, man. This is such a stupid critique to me.
And I don't know, that's been done before on a ticket, I mean, a lot of people.
Tulsi Gabbard, remember, that was that moment in the debate where she brought up that there are men and women in California that are in prison for these, pot deals. And then she was laughing about getting high on the radio station.
She didn't even specify a number. I don't know where the fuck Roland Martin got millions. This woman, Caitlin Flanagan, didn't even specify a number. She was simply describing the content of what Tulsi Gabbard said. And she accurately described it because that's exactly what Tulsi Gabbard said. Or not verbatim what she said, but in effect, that's what Tulsi Gabbard was saying. So she didn't lie about anything. And what's weird is he's kind of attributing things to her that she's actually describing came from another person, and she specified who it came from. She's talking about when Tulsi Gabbard owned Kamala Harris's ass on the debate stage in the 2019 debates leading up to the 2020 election. And what Tulsi Gabbard said was all facts. So I don't know what the hell Roland Martin is talking about, bruh. And what's weird is that he's playing it again, and he's going to continue to lie and bullshit to give his dumbass take and his dumbass critique that doesn't make any sense about what Bill Maher said. Why are you so mad, my guy? Like, what? Like, what they said was innocuous as fuck, bro, and you are reading way too much into it, fam.
And it was just like Tulsi Gabbard was like this heat-seeking missile. That was the end of it. She's got a lot of, in addition to being, for some reason, an off-putting person, she also has, I think, a lot of baggage that probably wouldn't do well under a lot of scrutiny.
I just think she's a bad politician, and I think she's a very bright person, but I don't know, but I can see.
Like, unless, I mean, Roland Martin seems to be suggesting that the specific use of language that both, I guess, Bill Maher and Flanagan used is, I guess, coded racist language. Is that what he's implying? When she said that she was off-putting and that she had baggage, is that supposed to be coded racial language? Is she dog whistling in some way? I don't know, man. Like, that seems like a baseless accusation, fam. And he said that she's a bad politician. He's basically right. Like, is she a good politician? Like, like on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being she's the best politician we've ever seen. Like, what is Kamala Harris for real? What is Kamala Harris? I feel like Kamala Harris is like a 3 tops. Stop lying, Roland Martin. Just because she black don't mean her shit don't stink, bruh. Fuck out of here.
Them doing that, because a lot of the problem with Biden being old is, if he dies, then you're going to get this person. Okay, so here's the problem with the Democratic Party. They're so boxed in by identity politics that you cannot conceive of a Democratic ticket that doesn't have a woman, person of color on it, and pretty soon you're going to line up behind that gay, Latino, and you're going to have a deaf Eskimo.
A deaf Eskimo. What that is a white man.
No, what that is one hell of a punchline, and you don't have a fucking sense of humor if you don't see the humor in that. That's funny right there. I don't care who you are. That's funny. Get her done. I don't know why this nigga's like hating so much, bro. Like why are you hating so hard, bro? Like, grow up, nigga.
Making fun of the fact that you have more than qualified black, Latino, women, and gay candidates, but for Bill Maher, hey, only white straight men need apply.
He didn't say that.
That's really what he's saying.
No, it's not. It doesn't even follow logically from what he actually said, though, bro. And now you've watched it and shown it to your audience at least twice. And presumably you've watched it more times than that in order to prepare for your show. You don't even know what clip you wanted to put in your show, bro. Like, come on, Roland Martin. You cannot be this willfully dense, my guy. Your take is so fucking far off. It doesn't make any sense. Like, it's, I guess, plausible to steelman him somewhat that Bill Maher harbors some kind of racial prejudice that's like operating below the surface or subconsciously that is making him dislike Kamala Harris. Maybe, but there's no evidence of that in terms of what he said and what his actual criticisms of Kamala Harris even were. So, like, this weird ass argument that what he's really saying without really saying it is that only white people should be vice president. Is stupid. It's really fucking stupid. Wow.
Drew, I called you because you just heard with what that fool Caitlyn had to say, and Bill Maher did not correct her order. Drew, can you hear me?
Hear you loud and clear. You hear me?
All right. So she sat here and just lied, and how Tulsi Gabbard just blew her away about all of the men and women who Kamala Harris locked up.
Yeah, she did.
And pot smoking Bill Maher didn't correct her. You've done numerous videos completely just dispelling that lie.
Part of me wants to watch his whatever videos he's talking about, but part of me feels like it's going to be a waste of time because of like the fact that Roland Martin has just like demonstrated that he can't follow basic fucking logic and just like basic comprehension of what people say. He can't prioritize doing that over some narrative that he wants to pursue that fits into some, I don't know, ultimate narrative that is, I guess, part of the subject matter proper of his whack ass book. This dude is about to say some shit that doesn't make any sense. And so what I want to do is I want to cut him off at the pass and I want to show several things. The first thing that I want to show is a couple of articles that are detailing Kamala Harris's very complicated past. So this is going to be the part where we're going to have to do a lot of work. And this is going to be one of the things that contributes to this being so long, other than me going over Roland Martin Unfiltered for this extended period of time. Okay. So what I'm going to start with is I'm going to start with a couple of left-leaning sources, right? So we're going to start with a Vox article. Vox is as left-leaning as it comes, okay? So let's go ahead and put Vox in here. Vox is as left leaning as it gets, bro. Like, so here's a Vox article, and it's all about Kamala Harris's like really controversial record on criminal justice, and it's trying to massage all of the negative stuff that the uber radical progressive activist types really don't like about Kamala Harris, because her what you have to take into account, which I think is actually fair, is she existed in a political milieu that was rapidly changing as she was rising up through the ranks, and she was trying to navigate the politics of that. And if you rock the boat too much, then that's going to undermine your ability to be able to even like get ahead and pursue, ultimately your political career. Now, some people might criticize that and be like, well, she prioritized advancement of her political career over, whatever black and brown people were, kind of the fallout of a fucked up criminal justice system that in many ways she perpetuated. So I think there's fair criticism here. But what these articles are going to try to do is they're going to attempt to take into account that nuance, because the higher that you get in the ranks, the more power you have to make effective change. And if you rock the boat too much too early, you won't never get into the higher positions of power where you can affect change. However, the conundrum is, in order to get into those higher positions of power, you have to rock the boat even less, unless the cultural political milieu around you change. And so what Kamala Harris was doing was she was trying to rock the boat only so much where she could still advance and then have more power to have better change and better influence, but only within the latitude that the cultural and political milieu around her allowed for. And so it actually was a very kind of slow and purposeful, or at least arguably, ascent. Now, there is still a fundamental question about whether she could have done more than she actually did, but I want to give some examples of the kinds of things that she was dealing with. So it reads, Kamala Harris's controversial record on criminal justice explained. Harris has characterized herself as a reformer, but some critics disagree. All right. So this is like an introduction of like her career and stuff like that, not what people think of her, but I want to skip down to a subsection here. So here, Harris is a progressive prosecutor. From the beginning of Harris's career in the criminal justice system, she said she saw herself as a progressive working within a system she wanted to change. So she's fundamentally working within a system that is flawed. And in order to be able to like maintain herself in that system, she kind of has to play ball. And what playing ball means is that she's going to have to go along with some of the aspects of the system that she wants to reform, but can't reform right away. Right. So she's trying to change things from within. Now, a lot of progressive types have to face this same challenge in our politics. So people like AOC have to play ball within the kind of norms and rules and regulations of the House and Congress. And they have to make deals that they don't necessarily agree with, and they have to go along with some party lines that they don't necessarily agree with. But if they maintain their stature long enough and raising the ranks long enough, then they can actually be more effective in changing it from within in the long term. So there's but what that entails and why it's controversial is you're sacrificing the short term for the long term. And in the short term, a lot of bad stuff could be happening. And in some sense, you're partly responsible because you're perpetuating the systems that are yielding the bad stuff in the short term in order to be able to change them in the long term. Okay. That political reality is a political reality, no matter what kind of reform that you want to enact, no matter what kind of change you want. That political reality has always been there. And so there is an ongoing debate between the uber radical types and the more savvy, careful types about what the best approach is. And clearly, the kind of approach that's best for the long term would be the slow and steady approach. However, the disillusionment comes when that slow and steady approach becomes so slow and so steady that actually the changes are either really small in the long run, or they never seem to happen at all. And justice too long delayed is justice denied, according to the great Dr. Martin Luther King. And so this has always been a political reality, and there are levels to it. There are versions of the slow progress methodology that end up amounting to no progress at all, right? Because it just gets delayed indefinitely. And then there are versions of no, we need to like up in everything, throw out the baby with the bathwater, and like radically revolutionize things now that cause all kinds of political destabilization and a whole bunch of like ripple effects that go way beyond the particular problems that people are trying to solve. So she's trying to navigate this. Now, I think that is substantive nuance to take into account. But I don't think that she's beyond reproach, though. I just think that taking that into account makes it really complicated to nail down exactly what she did right and exactly what she did wrong. And it's going to create opportunities for her to have a scapegoat that a lot of people are going to be disillusioned by and find unacceptable. So you're not going to be able to please everybody, but I'm just trying to give a summary of what this article is talking about. All right, it continues. She started out working at the prosecutor's office in the late 1980s and early 1990s, then became San Francisco's district attorney, the top prosecutor for the city in 2004. In 2011, she became California's attorney general, a top law enforcement official in the state. She held that position until 2017 when she became U.S. Senator for California. So this is a summary of her ascent from the prosecutor's office all the way to the U.S. Senate, and then obviously finally as vice president. That's her political ascent. Okay, in her more recent memoir, The Truths We Told, Harris described how she saw her role. Quote, the job of a progressive prosecutor is to look out for the overlooked, to speak up for those whose voices aren't being heard, to see and address the causes of crime, not just their consequences, and to shine a light on the inequality and unfairness that lead to injustice. It is to recognize that not everyone needs punishment, that what many need, quite plainly, is help. Okay, so that's very progressive and stuff. And she's talking about that root cause of stuff. Now, but she was trying to implement this kind of stuff in like the 1990s, bruh. And the 1990s was very much a time period where even Democrats were spewing that tough on crime rhetoric, and it could be a matter of political suicide to not kowtow to that, because both parties were very, very staunch about that, and the electorate was such that they would perceive you as being way too soft on crime, and you're basically being negligent and derelict in your duties. So you had to use that rhetoric and make moves to basically assure people that you were tough on crime, even though what you really wanted to do was not over punish, and you wanted to like change things from within. People like Chesa Boudin now in 2022 are able to say with their whole ass chest that I'm not going to prosecute certain kinds of crimes to whatever detriment. I mean, there's a political fallout even now in 2022, but can you imagine the political fallout of somebody like Chesa Boudin back in 1990? So we got to be. That's part of what I'm trying to like articulate here. And the more I read, the more I started to understand how complicated this is. So there is to steelman Kamala Harris's career a little bit. These kinds of complexities are not fairly taken. It's not clear that they were taken into account when Tulsi Gabbard levied those criticisms against her. But to be fair, Tulsi Gabbard levied a lot of the same criticisms that a lot of progressives have had of her for a while. So, and everything she said was facts, by the way. All right, skipping down, parts of Harris's record match that rhetoric. In 2004, as District Attorney of San Francisco, she refused to seek the death penalty against a man convicted of shooting police officer Isaac Espinoza. She faced opposition from fellow Democrats. Senator Dianne Feinstein called for the death penalty at the officer's funeral, but Harris didn't budge, an act of principle that cost her key political allies, as she received almost no support from police groups during her first run for Attorney General in 2010. Harris also pushed for more systemic reforms. Her most successful program as district attorney, Back on Track, allowed first-time drug offenders, including drug dealers, to get a high school diploma and a job instead of prison time. Adams, Harris's previous spokesperson, noted that the program started in 2005 when most prosecutors were using a tough-on-crime approach. So that rhetoric of being the progressive prosecutor is instantiated in examples like this. And this dude is actually going to cite those things. Okay. But Harris has a mixed record, particularly as Attorney General, which I want to read briefly, and then I'm going to go to another article in a second. So based on Harris's record, supporters easily could have expected her to come into the California Department of Justice as Attorney General and really shake things up, but that didn't happen. Her office's handling of over-incarceration, the death penalty, and wrongly incarcerated people were among several issues in which Harris, by and large, maintained the status quo. So the maintenance of the status quo, insofar as you're starting from the presupposition that our criminal justice system is inherently flawed, is something for which she receives a lot of criticism. She went up to Attorney General from District Attorney, and that, remember, the justification for the ascension is that when you get more power, you can effectively change things more. But she didn't, at least not at first. So she implemented some reforms. She expanded her Back on Track program to other parts of the state. After Black Lives Matter took off, she introduced an expanded what her office described as first of its kind training to address racial bias as well as procedural justice, earning praise from local newspapers. She made the California Department of Justice the first statewide agency to require body cameras. And she launched Open Justice, a platform that, among other data, allows the public to track reported killings by officers. But Harris also allowed many parts of the Justice Department to essentially operate as they long had, which at times led to what many now see as major injustices. In many cases, this led to her office making decisions that Harris, under scrutiny, tried to distance herself from. For example, Harris' office fought to release fewer prisoners, even after the U.S. Supreme Court found that overcrowding in California prisons was so bad that it amounted to unconstitutional, cruel, and unusual punishment. At one point, her lawyers argued that the state couldn't release some prisoners because it would deplete its pool for prison labor, which is one of the points that Tulsi Gabbard raised. She didn't lie. I don't know what the hell this dude is talking about. But Harris quickly clarified that she was not aware that her office was going with that argument until it was reported by the media. Now, there's some plausible deniability about the things that are being attributed to her. She was a part of offices that did things, and sometimes they did things without her telling her first. And so there's like plausible deniability about the extent to which she was responsible, but a lot of people don't buy that because she was in authority and she could have been more hands-on if she wanted to. The fact that she wasn't hands-on was a choice that she made, arguably. Or consider Harris's handling of appeals for release by innocent people in prison. In one case, her office argued against Daniel Larson, who was proven innocent by the Innocence Project because Harris's office claimed he filed his petition for release far too late after a legal deadline. The court disagreed, allowing Larson's release in 2013. And the New York Times Bazillion listed several more such cases. So there were cases like that where some innocent people should have been let out of jail, but her office did things that would have kept them in jail. But something happened, and in the case of Daniel Larson, her office lost lost a petition to basically keep this innocent person in jail. Now, if you are the kind of person who is a progressive prosecutor and you don't want to have a whole bunch of people in prison, then this kind of thing is the opposite of what you should be for, right? So there's some fair criticism here, yo. Like, it ain't like motherfuckers are making up shit. They're not lying on her. This actually happened. This is like hella evidence. All of this is from Vox, bruh. It's as left-leaning as they come. Harris's supporters argue that Harris likely wasn't closely involved in these cases because Justice Department policy didn't require state lawyers to seek approval from the Attorney General. So there's the plausible deniability again. As Harris said at a primary campaign event, there are cases where there were folks that made a decision in my office and they had not consulted me. I wish they had. But Harris could have changed department policy and become more hands-on. Remember, she has more power. She's district attorney. She's Attorney General. And became more hands-on on pushing reform if she was willing to risk a potential backlash from the people under her. So what this is basically articulating is she had the ability to be more hands-on. She chose not to, and likely because her doing that, her micromanaging in this way, would have led to potential backlash between people under her that probably would have hurt her chances of ascending in the long run. So you could argue, if that's true, that she prioritized her ascendance of her political career or the advancement of her political career over her progressive values. And if you have a person in a high place who's willing to do that, are they really all that progressive? To whatever extent she's contributing to the flaws of the criminal justice system that she even recognizes, she's guilty of that, and she should stand to be criticized. These aren't lies. There's the death penalty. Harris remains personally opposed to the death penalty, and early in her career, she'd be willing to incur political backlash by refusing to seek it in 2004. But as Attorney General, she told voters she would enforce capital punishment, and she did. In 2014, she appealed a judge's decision that deemed California's death penalty system unconstitutional. So she's personally against the death penalty, and she took some steps earlier in her career back in 2004, and she was willing to incur political backlash by refusing to seek the death penalty. But as Attorney General, she had more power and therefore had more of an ability to influence things in a positive way and solve the problems of the criminal justice system that even she recognizes. She told voters she would enforce capital punishment and did. And in 2014, she appealed the judge's decision that deemed California's death penalty system unconstitutional. Harris did not have to do this. In another case, she declined to defend Proposition 8, which prohibited same-sex marriage. But in office, she seemed to avoid antagonizing the rank and file, which opposition to the death penalty and other tough-on-crime policies could do. She often described herself as one of them, calling herself America's top cop, and writing in her 2009 book that liberals need to move beyond biases against law enforcement. So she's got mixed messaging throughout her career, and I think a lot of it is the product of what she felt was going to be the most viable for her career at the time. But to me, that implies a kind of duplicitousness, a kind of lack of principle, or at least arguably so. And that forms the basis of legitimate criticism. Okay? I'm almost there. I'm almost done with this one. Harris also overlooked and defended law enforcement officials accused of misconduct. In one such case, a state prosecutor, Robert Murray, falsified a confession using it to threaten the defendant with life in prison. After a court threw out the indictment, Harris's office appealed it, dismissing the misconduct because it did not involve physical violence. Does that look like justice to you? Does that sound like a progressive to you? These are fair criticisms, bruh. And none of them are lies. Unless Vox is somehow white supremacist or some shit, all of a sudden. Harris also resisted some attempts to hold police accountable for shootings, including a bill that would have required the Attorney General's office to investigate killings by police and efforts to create statewide standards for police-worn body cameras. She also defied calls to have her office quickly investigate certain police shootings in California. Quote, there's lots of resistance to reform, both within your own ranks and then from the cops and other allies, Silla told me. And acting differently in these situations could have upset the rank and file. After Harris had narrowly won her election in 2010 by less than 1 percentage point without the support of most law enforcement groups, but her inaction angered activists. And rightly so, I think. Quote, how many more people need to die before she steps in? A fair question. An activist and former supporter of Felicia Jones told the San Francisco Chronicle in 2016 regarding police shootings. Jones went on, directing her comments to Harris, quote, we don't even know you care. We don't even know that you care. You can turn your back on the people who got you to where you are, end quote. Yet this motherfucker Roland Martin is like clit riding as hard as he possibly can for this woman, and I don't understand why, bro. Like, why are you acting like there's no fair criticism of Kamala Harris, fam? Now, I want to get into the specific claims that Tulsi Gabbard made. I want to get into the claims that Tulsi Gabbard made. And so what I want to do is I want to play the clip first, and then after we play the clip, I'm going to fact check the things that she said. And I'm going to read a fact check. It's a left-leaning fact check. And then I'm just gonna pose the question rhetorically, I guess, because he can't hear me and he's not gonna respond to me because who am I? Like, where's the lie, Roland Martin? All right, so go ahead and take a quick look at the clip of Tulsi Gabbard owning Kamala Harris on the debate stage. Take a look.
I want to bring the conversation back to the broken criminal justice system that is disproportionately negatively impacting Black and brown people all across this country today. Now, Senator Harris says she's proud of her record as a prosecutor and that she'll be a prosecutor president, but I'm deeply concerned about this record. There are too many examples to cite, but she put over 1,500 people in jail for marijuana violations and then laughed about it when she was asked if she ever smoked marijuana. She blocked evidence. She blocked evidence that would have freed an innocent man from death row until the courts forced her to do so. She kept people in prison beyond their sentences to use them as cheap labor for the state of California. And she fought to keep cash bail system in place that impacts poor people in the worst kind of way.
Thank you, Congresswoman. Senator Harris, your response.
As the elected Attorney General of California, I did the work of significantly reforming the criminal justice system of a state of 40 million people, which became a national model for the work that needs to be done. And I am proud of that work. And I am proud of making a decision to not just give fancy speeches or be in a legislative body and give speeches on the floor, but actually doing the work of being in the position to use the power that I had to reform a system that is badly in need of reform. That is why we created initiatives that were about reentering former offenders and getting them counseling.
The bottom line is, Senator Harris, when you were in a position to make a difference and an impact in these people's lives, you did not. And worse yet, in the case of those who were on death row, innocent people. You actually blocked evidence from being revealed that would have freed them until you were forced to do so. There is no excuse for that. And the people who suffered under your reign as prosecutor, you owe them an apology.
All right. So you saw the clip. And what I want you to do now is to take a quick look at this fact check that I found. So the fact check actually concerns a lot of the claims that were made on that debate stage. All right, so this is going to be an AFP fact check. Here we go. All right. Misleading claim says Harris jailed 1,500 black men for marijuana. Okay, so this says it's misleading. What is misleading about the claim? All right, so this is referring to a Facebook post for some reason, but it's actually going to like subtly shift from this Facebook post to some of the things that Tulsi Gabbard said, and it's going to do it in a weird way that I guess suggests that what Tulsi Gabbard said is false, but actually it's going to prove that what she said is correct. So these fact checks be cracking me up, bro, because they be proving the thing that they pretend is not true. But here goes. A Facebook post criticizing Democratic vice presidential candidate Kamala Harris' record as a prosecutor has been shared more than 200,000 times weeks before the November 3rd election. However, the post misrepresents incarceration statistics and also falsely states that she released evidence after 2 black men were executed. Okay. Quote, she jailed 1,500 black men for possession of weed, reads a Facebook post shared more than 200,000 times since October 8, 2020. It also claims Joe Biden's running mate, quote, withheld evidence on 2 black men that were on death row and released the evidence after they were executed. The accompanying photo shows Harris laughing. Okay. Now, there is parts of those 2 claims, those 2 specific claims that I think are false, and I'm going to try to point those out to be fair. But those aren't the claims that Tulsi Gabbard made, to be fair. Okay, while Biden's choice of running mate was hailed as a historic first for women of color, she has come under fire for her record as prosecutor and for failing to intervene in cases involving police brutality. The other thing I want to point out is that a lot of people, when they defend her, they skip her record as a prosecutor and they go all the way to either DA or attorney general or senator. And I think that that's a clever manipulation because she was all of those things and she did different things at those different times or in her official capacity in those different positions. And if you criticize her as a prosecutor, right, specifically, you don't get to move the goalposts and be like, yeah, but as like an attorney general, she did so many amazing things. But go back to when she was a prosecutor though, and she just fucked up shit. Talk about that because that's what the claim is about. And that's what Tulsi Gabbard's talking about. Right? Like you can't like you know what I mean? Like if you wanted to launch like a criticism of a particular I don't know, Republican GOPer who had a certain position and they did some fucked up shit, but then they advanced to something even higher and they did great stuff. And you're like, yeah, but when they did this, back when they were such and such, they did X, Y, Z and it was horrible. It's like, yeah, but like, what about when they were president? It's like the whataboutism of that is like, bro, like you're not speaking to what we're talking about though. And I get we can be nuanced and we can take all of them into account, but like I don't like because Roland Martin and his buddy who he just called are about to do that, and I'm about to expose them right now for that. All right. AFP ran a search for keywords Kamala Harris jailed 1,500 and found a New York Times article from July 2019 on a Democratic presidential debate in which Harris sparred with Hawaii Congresswoman Tulsi Gabbard. Yup. Senator Harris says she's proud of her record as prosecutor, that she'll be a prosecutor president, but I'm deeply concerned about this record, Gabbard said. She put over 1,500 people in jail for marijuana violations and then laughed about it when she was asked if she ever smoked marijuana. That's true, though, bruh. Roland Martin is saying that people are lying. I don't see where the lie is. All of those are facts. This fact check is about to bear those out. The 1,500 figure appears to come from a 2019 article by the Washington Free Beacon. A conservative publication entitled Kamala Harris Packed California Prisons with Pot Peddlers. It quotes statistics from the California Department of Corrections and Rehabilitation, and that at least 1,560 people were jailed for marijuana offenses in state prisons when Harris was California State Attorney General from 2011 through 2016. Okay. The website later published a correction and pointed to a fact check by the San Francisco Chronicle, which put the number of admissions to California state prison for marijuana and hashish admissions at 1,974 during that period. So it got fact checked, and the number was actually about 400 more for that period. This is confirmed by CDCR data obtained by AFP, which relates to all inmates, not just black men. Contacted by AFP, the CDCR said there was no breakdown for marijuana offense admissions specifically by ethnicity and gender. So this total amount from 2011 to 2016 is 1,974. So it's actually more. Okay. Now let's go back to the quote. I can't believe they're doing this. She put over 1,500 people in jail. Is 1,974 over 1,500? Is it more? She put over 1,500 people in jail for marijuana violations, and then laughed about it when she was asked if she ever smoked marijuana. Now they're talking about when you talk about smoking pot on the Breakfast Club.
Yeah, I do. I know a lot of weed smokers.
Have you ever smoked?
I have.
Okay. Like in
And
college,
I inhale. I did inhale.
Okay.
It was a long time ago. But yes.
I know you have to go. They say you have to go. I just wanted to
I
ask.
just broke loose.
I mean, was it in college?
But too early for a join as well. But too early for a join as well. For a join as well. But too early.
I want to talk to you.
I believe we need to legalize marijuana.
We have the footage. Yes, she laughed about it. They asked her if she smoked weed. Now I understand the context was different. You know, it was kind of jovial or whatever. And she said she smoked weed and did her awkward cackling that she does from time to time. In 2011, the California Public Safety Realignment Act meant most newly sentenced nonviolent criminals, including most drug offenders, were sent to county jail rather than state prison. This explains a drop in admission figures from 2011 to 2012. So from 2011 to 2012, it drops. The black male population of California state prison stayed roughly the same during Harris's time as Attorney General, according to CDCR data in December 2010. Shortly before Harris took office, 29% of male inmates were black. In December 2017, after she left, this figure had dipped to 28.5%. So a little less than 30%, fam. Now, what is 30% of 1,974? 1,974 times. We'll do 29, but times 29% equals. So about 572 and a half black people. So 570, let's call it 572 black people were in prison for marijuana. If we're just taking in the percentage, right? Because the percentage stayed the same, so that it stands to reason that the influx of new inmates would have the same percentage roughly of black people. Right? So that's about a third of the number. Now, to be fair, Tulsi Gabbard never specified the race. She just said 1,500 people in jail. But if in your tenure from 2011 to 2016 of 5 years encompasses about 100 black people a year being put in jail for marijuana violations, how progressive can you be, fam? Just a question. Just a question. So back to the fact check. Harris blocked evidence. So they just moved off of that. They didn't debunk shit that Tulsi Gabbard said. Tulsi Gabbard was right. Now for her blocking evidence. The Facebook post also claims that Harris withheld evidence in cases of 2 black men on death row and released the evidence only after they had been executed. This claim also appears to come from Gabbard's remarks during her 2019 presidential debate with Harris. She blocked evidence that would have freed an innocent man from death row until the courts first forced her to do so. Well, that's right. I just read you that shit from Vox, fam. Do I got to go back to Vox? What was the name of that man, that young man? Daniel Larson. Her office argued against Daniel Larson, who was proven innocent by the Innocence Project, because Harris' office claimed he filed his petition for release far too late for a legal decline. The court disagreed, allowing Larson's release in 2013. But sadly, it's worse than that. I got a New York Post article that goes into her record a lot more deeply in terms of the kinds of the kinds of stunts that she pulled and when. Her prosecutors also defended the conviction of George Gage, who was charged in 1999 with sexually abusing his stepdaughter and put away by her testimony, according to a New York Times opinion piece. A judge later found that Harris's prosecutor failed to turn over exculpatory evidence, including that the stepdaughter had repeatedly lied to law enforcement and that her mother described her as a pathological liar. The case got pitched to the 9th District Court of Appeals, with Harris's prosecutors fighting against tossing Gage's conviction on a technicality that he had failed to raise the legal issue in a lower court. He's still in prison serving over 70-year sentence. Very fucking progressive. As Attorney General, her office fought against new DNA testing for death row inmate Kevin Cooper, who claims that he was framed for murder. Some legal experts believe that the test could help overturn his conviction. That's from the New York Post. So yeah, I mean, like, what are we talking about here, fam? Like, for real. A New York Times article from 2018 accused police of framing Kevin Cooper, a black man sentenced to death for his 1983 killing of 4 people in Chino Hills, California. The report said Harris refused to allow new DNA testing when she was Attorney General that it suggested could have proved Cooper's innocence. New York Times journalist Nicholas Kristof and Harris phoned him after the article was published and told him, "I feel awful about this." She also issued a statement calling on authorities to allow the testing. According to the California prison records, Cooper, now 62, is still on death row. AFP found no evidence Harris released evidence in cases after a black convict was executed. So the part that is false is that she released evidence after he was executed, but that wasn't what Tulsi Gabbard claimed. Specifically, Tulsi Gabbard. That's what the Facebook post that they found claimed. But Tulsi Gabbard didn't say that. Tulsi Gabbard said she put over 1,500 people in jail for marijuana violations and then laughed about it when she was asked if she ever smoked marijuana. That was one quote. And then the other quote was that she blocked evidence that would have freed an innocent man from death row until the courts forced her to do so. Freeing an innocent man from death row is not the same thing as them releasing it after he died. So let's get straight about the difference between that random Facebook post and what Tulsi Gabbard said. What Tulsi Gabbard said is borne out by the fucking fact check, bruh. AFP. And I want the smoke. Give me any other fact checks. I bet you the fact checkers, unless they're lying, are going to prove this right still. So I don't know what Roland Martin is talking about. Like, shit is weird. So now let's listen to this dude that he done recruited because he has some kind of expertise in debunking all of the myths about Kamala Harris, and see whether he's going to contradict the fact check we just went over and all of the sources, many of them left-leaning, that we just went over that verified this shit.
Well, yeah, because it's not true. It's pretty easy stuff to look up too.
Which we just
the
did.
moment with Tulsi Gabbard, it's easy to be loud and wrong, but in the moment, when people can't fact check you in real time and make you seem like you know what you're talking about, but the fact of the matter is, everything that she said was an outright lie.
No, it was not. I just fact checked everything she just said. I just read you a fact check from a left-leaning source that verified everything she just said. The hell you talking about, bruh? But you are right about one thing. It's easy to be loud and wrong. You doing it right now. You're doing a great job of it, Mr. Expert. Like, and it didn't even take me that long to find this shit, too. Like Vox has no reason to lie on leftists, bro. And Vox is trying to massage the nuances and shit and try to like steal man and put her in the best light possible. I got another NPR article I didn't show yet that's doing that too. So I don't know what like what. It's just her record is piss poor, bro. Like stop it. like stop it. Please stop it. All right, let's keep going.
It was misinformation, disinformation way before we even had a COVID situation. But
no, it wasn't. Spreading misinformation right now. What are you talking about? We just verified this shit, bro. What would be more respectful is if you actually did the fact check live in real time like I just did. Because now the more you talk, the dumber you sound.
Kamala Harris really is the opposite of what that. She did not lock up a bunch of black people for weed. As a matter of fact, when she became San Francisco DA, over the length of time of her DA reign, the admissions for state prison marijuana imprisonment fell 66% over her predecessor.
You're misconstruing. Oh my God. So like you're not even addressing the claims that were made. First of all, nobody said she locked up a bunch of black people specifically. That's not what Tulsi Gabbard said, and that's not what that Flanagan woman said, who was actually just referring to what Tulsi Gabbard said. Tulsi Gabbard said that she incarcerated over 1,500 people for weed and then laughed about it when she asked if she smoked weed. She didn't say all of those 1,500 were black. And what I just established, it was actually closer to 1,900, bruh. It's damn near 2,000. And over 500 of them were black if the estimates are correct in terms of 29% of the people who were incarcerated being black. That's about 100 black. That's about 100 niggas a year getting them locked up for weed, bruh. That ain't progressive. That's worthy of criticism. Speak on that.
Like the last guy locked up 135 people to state prison when marijuana was the most serious charge. Over the same amount of time, Kamala Harris locked up only 45. So that's a drop. Even when she became Attorney General, same thing. First of all, Attorney Generals don't even prosecute marijuana cases. I say it all the time. That'd be like the CEO of Target ringing you up on aisle 3. That ain't gonna happen.
Yeah, but the Attorney General, oh my God, that's so fucking disingenuous. The Attorney General has the ability to change policy and that actually steers who gets prosecuted and for what and who does not. She had the ability to not prosecute them niggas for weed, and she didn't do that. So on her watch as AG, them niggas got prosecuted, bruh, and they in jail. Some of them probably still in there because of her. That ain't progressive. That's a stain on her record. And she's walking around as vice president now, talking about she's going to be a prosecutor. In the context of the debate, she's talking about she's going to be a prosecutor president. And she's pretending to be progressive as fuck, but her record is at the very least mixed. Where is the lie?
But even then, even during that time, the actual imprisonment for marijuana fell during her time as AG. So this mythical time that she was locking people up for weed, we ain't seen in real life.
And then the other thing that he said, he made an interesting comparison about like that would be like the CEO of Target, doing something that the regular employees do. But yeah, but if some kind of injustice was taking place at Target, the CEO would be implicated in criticism about that because he's the fucking CEO. So actually that analogy actually belies the point you're trying to make. Actually, what it demonstrates is that it makes perfect sense to hold her accountable because she's in the higher position of power to actually do something about the injustice, bruh. That's what we're saying. You're quibbling over whether or not she physically escorted niggas in handcuffs into the prison jail cells, my nigga. Like, what are you talking about? That ain't what people are even saying. She's responsible for those people being in jail because she had the power to change or affect those policies that landed them in there. That's what we're saying. So this weird sophistry that you're engaging in, all smug and shit, like what the fuck? Like y'all haven't identified a single lie that has been told by either Tulsi Gabbard, by Flanagan, or Bill Maher. Not one. Not one. Not one. And you're sitting there all smug because you got a group of niggas that all agree and are sniffing their own farts with your hands all up in your ass. You're not even addressing the substance of what the accusations are, bruh. You're just kowtowing for this woman. For what?
But y'all got some good imaginations, though. And I've learned that.
Well, and again, when people like this go on national shows and repeat the lie and no one corrects the lie, then somebody watching goes, well, there it is.
The irony is that that's exactly what you're doing on your show right now, bro. That's like literally what you're doing on your show right now. And I don't know if you're not. I don't know if you're on par with Bill Maher. It seems like you're not, and that's probably why you were your butt hurt that he wanted to invite you back on this show, because you are desperate for the exposure or some shit. But like, bruh, you're doing that right now. Everybody who watches your show is liable to be misinformed, right? I'm just a regular ass nigga with a fucking bachelor's degree in philosophy, and I was able to debunk everything that you said in like a couple of hours, fam. Actually, less than that. It didn't take me that long to even find the sources that I used. But the video is about to be 2 hours long. That's fucking embarrassing, fam. And I didn't even go to a HBCU. Let's continue.
She was horrible. She was a cop, and she was just locking people up and just throwing the key away. And then the black folks ran with it. Oh, she locked up all these brothers. She didn't care about brothers. She didn't care about sisters. Or they took one case and said, oh, that represented all the cases, and folks were simply lying. And that's what Bill Maher calls bad.
Nobody told a single lie, bro. Like everything that has been actually claimed that you didn't just pull out of your ass has been verified several times over. By the way, y'all didn't debunk shit. This is embarrassing, fam. This is like, no wonder I stopped watching Roland Martin. Like, don't get me wrong, Roland Martin does know things, and Roland Martin is informed about a lot of things that I'm, I lack knowledge about. To be fair, he's not a total idiot, but like, this is imbecilic, bro. Like, you are going out of your way to defend this woman when her record is at the very least complicated and definitely not above reproach, fam. She ain't perfect. I think you know that. Her record ain't clean from the point of view of progressives, being a progressive, being the progressive that she's been selling to people, selling herself as, and you know it. And she's had some very controversial policy positions throughout her ascendance to the goddamn vice presidency, fam. These are all facts. There is a legitimate basis to not like her as a politician because she's two-faced and duplicitous. And she's demonstrated throughout her entire ascendance and throughout her entire political career that she's willing to do whatever she thinks is popular in the moment in order to get ahead. And she'll prioritize her ascendance and the ascendancy of her political career, or the advancement of her political career, over what's right. And progressives do not fuck with that shit. That's why they're upset. That's why they don't fuck with her. That's why they ain't voting for her. That's facts. So all of this racism that and Bill Maher's a white man that is a clear deflection from substantive criticism that she deserves. Just because she black don't mean she's above reproach, bruh. And it don't mean that any substantive criticism of her is racist or sexist. Fuck out of here, man.
Baggage.
Baggage, yeah, that's funny. Now, you know what we call it now? Now you said I'm knee deep in the debunking the misinformation on COVID vaccines game. We call it disinformation, and we call it just very dangerous, to be honest with you, man. Like when something goes out long enough, is there to correct it, it can gain so much traction, people really start to believe it, and so they don't even know the fact that Kamala Harris is one of the original pioneers of something called restorative justice, with her Back on Track program in San Francisco, to where instead of getting people locked up for something like, I don't know, a little bit of weed or 2 grams of crack, you give them jobs, you give them employment training, job readiness training, you give them education so they get their GED, you help them with their credit, parental training, and so on and so forth, rather than putting them in prison cells just because they were trying to sell some drugs so they could make some money to feed their family. So, it's the misinformation game. Definitely is something that it's dangerous. It's lucrative for the people who know how to capitalize on it, but it definitely is dangerous in the overall perception of public health and.
Okay, so I will say that she does deserve credit for some of the things like that program that he just named, because that's definitely in the vein of restorative justice. That's definitely a progressive type of policy. That's the kind of policy that I think that a lot of progressives would value. Rather than incarcerate people, what you do is you give people you isolate people who have non-violent criminal offenses, and then you put them in a program that sets them up to be able to, like, fend for themselves economically and not have to stoop to selling or purchasing of various forms of drugs to make ends meet, right? And that's steeped in this root causes rationale that I think is very appealing to a lot of progressives, and to a certain extent I even agree with it. It depends on what the policy is and how it's implemented, and whether or not the policy, and to what extent the policy entails not holding people accountable for the crimes they commit. But if the part of the goal is to get people out there after they paid their debt to society, and set them up for success so that they don't have to fall back into criminality, particularly if these people are disproportionately Black and brown, I'm all for policies that are successful at doing that. And this is one such policy that she helped bring about in California. She deserves credit for that. That's a positive. At the same time, she deserves criticism for the other shit that she did. So we can be nuanced. I'm down for nuance, and I give praise where praise is, credit where credit is due, and give substantive critiques and constructive criticism where that's due. But the idea that because a white man criticized a woman who deserved fair criticism, who happened to be Black, is somehow inherently racist because he's white and the person he's criticizing happens to be a Black woman, is he's a white man and the person he's criticizing happens to be a Black woman, is just textbook woke-tardedness.
And public policy.
All right, Drew. I appreciate it, man. Thanks for jumping on real quick. I appreciate it.
Appreciate it, everybody. Get vaccinated, get boosted. We're done.
All right, thanks a bunch. Bringing my panel here, Juliana Amakonga, Renita. I mean, it really pisses me off. It pisses me off when I watch this stuff, when I listen to this nonsense. And again,
the irony.
I've been saying this for years. President meets with Black pastors, but when they white, he meets with pastors. President meets with Latino leaders, but when it's a room full of white CEOs, he meets with CEOs. Identity politics includes white people. But what Bill Maher chose to do is he chose to weaponize that, and then he sounds exactly like Republicans, Julian, in attacking Democrats, and what he is operating with his white male nationalistic view. How dare Democrats elevate women, elevate men, and what's so...
Wait, so now Bill Maher's back to being a Republican? All right, to be fair, he didn't actually say that Bill Maher is a Republican. He said he sounds like the Republicans. I don't know where he gets nationalism from. Nationalism isn't even germane to what Bill Maher was even saying or criticizing. To steelman him a little bit, I think the thing that I would agree with is that identity politics is a concept that applies to identities full stop, not just certain identities, not just the ones that the left puts a premium on, not just the historically marginalized identity categories, right? But all of them, including but not limited to the ones that have been historically in the position of doing the oppressing or dominating, i.e. white males, according to this worldview. So, and actually there's a lot of truth to that. I mean, white men have historically done a lot of colonization and dominating and raping and pillaging and shit all over the world. That's true. The Europeans were savages for real. Like they did a lot of fucked up shit in a lot of different places for real. That's true. Now, that said, that doesn't it's not clear, like, what is the evidence that Bill Maher is operating under some kind of weird anxiety to preserve the superiority of white people when he's criticizing Kamala Harris for shit that is fair to criticize her for. Bill Maher ain't even the only one that criticizes her for this shit. There's people of all kinds of identities and ethnic backgrounds and racial backgrounds and genders who criticize her for the same shit. I criticize her for that shit. I'm not a white male. I'm a black male. And if you want to saddle me with patriarchy or some shit, then I guess you could do that too. But black Women even criticize her for this shit. So I don't know what the fuck y'all talking about. Like, what is there any intersection of identities that is eligible to criticize her for this shit? And why do you have to be of a particular identity in order to criticize a person for something they should be criticized for in their official capacity in office? Ain't like we just randomly picking her off the street and criticizing her. This motherfucker had rose through the ranks, started as a prosecutor, ended up as the district attorney in Oakland, ended up as an attorney general of California, ended up as a U.S. senator of representing California, and now is the fucking vice president of the United States, bruh. The number 2 in terms of the highest office in the land of the executive branch of government, bruh. If we can't criticize her, then who can we criticize? And why does it have to implicate race or sexism or patriarchy just because we're criticizing her for her record on criminal justice, which is something that we all agree, even Roland Martin agrees, is problematic and in desperate need of reform. But you can't criticize black women for some reason? The fuck, bro? Like, I don't... man, I'm gonna end this soon because I'm getting madder and madder the more I think about this.
She literally, this is what is so stupid to me. How much of a dumbass Bill Maher?
Yo, him calling people stupid and a dumbass right now is the most ironic shit possible. He can't see through his own wokeness, bruh. He can't see it. He can't see it. And these motherfuckers are just nodding and clapping, just like, preach, brother. Like, they really... These are educated people, by the way. These are idiots. Even though what they're saying makes no sense, these are smart, intelligent, chocolate people that he has on his panel. And they got accolades and credentials and HBCU that and fucking Alpha Phi, whatever fucking, I don't know, you know, the fucking sororities, and a lot of them plays different sororities and shit. I've seen his show a lot. These are very accomplished, learned motherfuckers who are saying ridiculous shit right now. And would be the main ones, like if I actually showed them on their panel and just like debunked them or tried to debunk them in the way that I just did right now on my show, they would lord all of those credentials over me. Like I couldn't possibly be writing them all of the panels and the plethora of motherfuckers with doctorates and shit from various different prestigious HBCUs or universities across the country. I couldn't possibly be writing they wrong. They can't possibly be blinded by their ideology. That's, bruh. I gotta end this soon. I'm getting madder and madder.
President. One in American history. One non-male vice president. Any women been vice president before? Any? So she the first female vice president, right? So you got one. Oh, Lord. The house is we might as well demolish the house. Oh, Lord. One woman got in. How dare. Oh, Lord. Can't call 911.
Bro,
that's literally what this fool is saying.
He's on some Jake Uger type shit right now, fam. And that's not what he's saying. He never said that at all. You're not being fair or generous at all or objective, nigga. You done lost the plot about an hour ago, bruh. I can't with this nigga no more. I'm done. I'm done. I can't. I was gonna try to get through it, but I can't. It's making me sick. Well, I gotta get this nigga off my screen. I can't with this nigga. So let me do this. I'm gonna end it here. It's been 2 hours. This dude is tripping. Like point blank period, he's tripping. He misattributed a whole bunch of stuff to Bill Maher. This nigga got me in here defending Bill Maher. I don't even agree with Bill Maher the vast majority of the time. But like, he's misattributing shit to him, to the Flanagan lady or whatever. He's misattributing shit to her too. Like, at the end of the day, I can't think of a single criticism that he levied against either or both of them that actually makes sense. Like, it genuinely doesn't make sense to me. Like at all. Like I can't even steel man this man. I've been trying to. Like, I think the only point that I think I agree with that I could actually argue in good conscience and good faith is that identity politics is not the exclusive providence of like black people or brown people. It doesn't exclusively pertain to them. Identity politics is a general concept that applies to any identity categories, including but not limited to white people. And so Van Jones made the point, I think, with a lot better, which is that identity politics in some sense can be encapsulated by Joe Biden on some level. It's a little bit of an awkward point that he made because he made it sound like, well, he didn't specify whether it was the white people on the left that wanted Joe Biden to be president or if it was just generally people on the left who wanted a white president. I don't know how many black people who voted for Joe Biden wanted a white president generally. I think they were willing to settle for him because he was the guy who was nominated and he was better than Trump. But I feel like a lot of people who voted for Joe Biden, it was definitely lesser of two evils logic, because not a lot of people like that nigga, and his approval, and at one point his approval rating got even lower than Trump's lowest in his entire term. So like, I don't know, man. Like, that was one of the most embarrassing, cringy, unhinged tirades that Roland Martin has ever launched against a person. I've seen him do this to other people, but I never really like was critical or analyzed it. I just kind of passively watched it and maybe even delighted at some of the funny things that he says when he makes fun of people. He's a very animated person. He's entertaining to watch, but just like evaluating it objectively, like this was just nonsense. Like that shit was weird, bro. He just foisted all of this racial shit onto a situation that didn't really call for it at all. And everybody on his show is just nodding and shaking hands, like, yep, you're so right. And I'm just like, wow, these motherfuckers are cheerleaders for like I don't know, man. This is that woke shit I do not fuck with, bro. I just can't with that shit, bro. It doesn't make sense to me, like, at all. Like, it doesn't make sense. Like, it makes black people in particular who get really irate about things that they genuinely suspect are aspects of racism in our society. It gets them to say dumb shit as they try to piece together narratives and connect dots that ought not be connected and ought not be pieced together. So I'm going to end it right there, just over the 2-hour mark. This has been the Black Muse Podcast. I'm your host, Jason Muse, aka the Black Muse. And until next time, peace.